Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today we discuss if the NBA lottery was rigged last summer for the Spurs to get Victor Wembenyama. Why are we talking about this? Well, as you guys probably know, if you're an NBA fan watching this isn't the first time we've ever heard about a lottery conspiracy. The most famous one being Patrick Ewing in the very first lottery, I believe it was the '85 draft, where a lot of people believe that the NBA rigged the lottery, or David Stern specifically rigged the lottery for the Knicks to get Patrick Ewing. And I'd say maybe it's recency bias, but I think the second biggest conspiracy I think to date is probably Wembanyama to the Spurs. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I saw this clip from the Hoop Collective, which is a ESPN podcast hosted by Brian Windhorst, an NBA reporter, and he had on Tim McMahon and Mark J. Spears, and they were talking about the NBA lottery being rigged. And Mark Spears has an opinion that he believes that the Spurs had the lottery rigged in their favor. Well, he believes the NBA rigged the lottery for the Spurs. I should clarify that. But we'll go ahead, play this little clip here, and then we will talk about it afterwards.
All lottery conspiracy theories died on one night. I don't want to hear it ever again. I won't even listen to three syllables. On the night when the Knicks and the Lakers were in the Final Four, when Zion and Ja Morant were in the lottery, the Pelicans and the Grizzlies got one too. And, with all due respect to RJ Barrett, the whole world knew that the drop-off was after the second pick. Okay? So, I'm sorry. After that happens, I mean, not that I believed it in the past, but after that happens, there's no more talking about lottery.
Well, what about the Spurs getting number one?
What's the conspiracy?
Come on, man.
No,
They're
what's
gonna make
the conspiracy?
Sure they're making sure that Wemby went to the right franchise.
Did he? Did he?
Pop. What were the other choices? Charlotte.
The NBA is not rigging one of the three smallest markets to get one of the biggest name players. I'm sorry. I mean, David Stern once said,
They made sure that Victor went to the safest place.
You're crazy.
Well,
man.
all I'm going to say is
man.
this.
Come on,
I
Spears. You're in
walked
the Hall
into
of
that
Fame.
room in Chicago, and I'm like, "You're going to San Antonio. I don't know why we're wasting our time."
Okay, that's fine and dandy. But if the idea was to put Wemby in a situation where it was going to be just smooth sailing, it's been a miserable failure. Wemby has been awesome, and the Spurs have been awful.
I understand
And
that.
I tell you what,
but
Wendy,
there's a foundation there. There's a coach there.
Listen, man, there's a coach with the Dallas Cowboys for a long time.
Put him in Charlotte.
Listen,
there was frozen ping pong balls in that room. Man.
Oh, come on, man. I reject all of it.
I don't think Pop has covered himself in glory this year. That's all I'm going to say about that.
All right.
I don't think Pop's had a very good
point.
Year.
All right, so there you have it, guys. That is the clip there. Now, the point of this video, too, isn't to either agree with Mark J. Spears, and it's not to, rip him apart either, because this is a thing that a lot of people think, and I do think that was delivered with a little bit tongue-in-cheek here, where it wasn't this passionate case of whether or not the lottery is rigged or not. So I just kind of wanted to say that off the bat here. But to the point here of, because I've heard a lot of people say this, and I think this is why, a lot of people think this, where it's like, oh, they're sending Wembanyama to the Spurs with Greg Popovich and the great infrastructure, and they're the great talent evaluators and all of this stuff. To that point, guys, since Tim Duncan left, what have the Spurs done? They had one little Kawhi run. Then Kawhi was like, GTFO, me out of here. I do not want to be a part of this organization anymore. And then what have they done since then? Have they had a top 4 seed since then? They had I think they made the playoffs either once or twice with the DeMar DeRozan, LaMarcus Aldridge duo, but that team ultimately didn't do anything. They haven't really been hitting their picks. If you went to the end of the NBA season last year, at the end of 2023, and you ranked the talent of the rosters 1 through 30 in the NBA, you would have ranked the San Antonio Spurs as dead last. Dead last. They don't have any sort of blue chip guys. They have some guys I like. I kind of like Sohan. I think Devin Vassell's a good scorer. I think he's a good offensive player. Keldon Johnson's a decent player. but they don't have like any surefire like future stars on this team, and they haven't been doing a good job drafting. And it's like, well, even if they haven't been doing a good job drafting, they still paired him with Popovich. Guys, Popovich, people in the NFL and college football think that Nick Saban and Bill Belichick are old. Popovich is like 3 or 4 years older than both of them. Popovich is 75 years old. Popovich is 75 years old. I'll say it again. 75. He's not going to be coaching for another 10 years. I don't know if he's going to be coaching for another 5. So if the idea was like, oh, we'll just go and pair him with Popovich. Popovich isn't 55 or 65. He's 75 years old. And the dude's lost a little bit of his fastball. I know he's still probably a good, like, role model, coach, leader. But as far as like the X's, now again, it could be something where the team, the franchise just isn't giving him good stuff for him to coach around, for him to coach up. But the Spurs aren't this like great organization that we saw in the 2000s and the early 2010s. They aren't that anymore. They're a team that hasn't been drafted well. They missed out on Tyrese Halliburton. I believe it was the pick right before Tyrese Halliburton got selected. The Spurs had a chance to get Tyrese Halliburton. Wouldn't he be a great pairing with Victor Wembenyama? And so I don't buy the argument that like, oh, he sent him to this awesome situation. Wouldn't they rather send him to a bigger market, as when Horst pointed out there, but a place where he could be paired with somebody? They mentioned Charlotte there. Charlotte, say what you want about Charlotte. Charlotte's got 4 more wins right now than the Spurs. The Spurs with Wembanyama have 11 wins. That is only 2 more than the 2 laughing stocks in the NBA, which are the Pistons and the Wizards. The Spurs only have 2 more wins, and they have Wembanyama having this incredible rookie year. I know they're not winning, but he's still doing incredible stuff every single night, and he's being awesome. So I don't buy that like that was the best situation for him. They could have sent him to Houston, which was a big market that has some talent. They could have, even though Detroit's not playing that well this year, they could have sent him to Detroit, which is a bigger market, and paired him with Cade Cunningham or Jaden Ivey. They could have sent him to Charlotte to pair with LaMelo Ball. So I don't buy that like the Spurs were this awesome situation for him with the infrastructure and no, they're not that anymore. They haven't been that for like 8 years. They haven't been that for 8 years. They haven't been doing a good job with, I guess you could say the best trade that they did do is when they traded DeJounte Murray to the Hawks. That was an awesome trade, but Derek White's a better player than DeJounte Murray, and they got rid of him. And he's one of the key pieces to the Boston Celtics right now. And you got rid of him. And I don't even know what they got back in that trade. You guys got, you looking back at that Kawhi trade, when they traded Kawhi. Now, again, I understand he only had 1 year left on his deal, but they didn't get anything. They got DeRozan, cool. He left in free agency. Cool, you made the playoffs one time with him. Awesome. So I just don't think the Spurs are this awesome organization. Now, getting to the bigger picture of like, is the lottery been rigged? Has the lottery ever been rigged? The one time I think that it may have been rigged, the one and only time it may have been rigged, and I don't even know if I necessarily believe it, is the Patrick Ewing one. I think that's the one time it seems like it would have been, and it's also like, knowing what we know about David Stern, I wouldn't put it past him to maybe rig the lottery for the favor of the Knicks too. And if you look at the position of the league at that time, where it wasn't as popular, they're trying to grow the sport. Putting Patrick Ewing, one of the most famous, best college basketball players of all time, in the biggest market, or one of the biggest markets in all of the NBA, would have been a smart move. So that's the one time that I think that like, hey, it might have been rigged. But they brought up the Pelicans one there, where the Pelicans and the Grizzlies got picks 1 and 2, and the Lakers and the Knicks, more notably, got 3 and 4. Because even 2, you could have like kind of slided it and been like, we'll give the Knicks 2. If it actually was rigged, we'll just give them 2. We won't be that obvious and give them 1, but we'll give them Ja. They could have done something like that, but they didn't. Another one that I think that if you're going to point out that like, hey, the lottery's not rigged. 1997 draft. Tim Duncan's coming out. Everyone knows Tim Duncan's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. Everyone knows, well, maybe not everyone knows he's going to be great, but everyone thinks he's going to be pretty darn good, and he's going to be the certified number 1 pick in the NBA draft. Two teams that were bad that year that had high lottery odds were the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. Both big markets, both teams that have historic kind of juice brands with the NBA. If the NBA was ever going to rig a lottery, wouldn't it have been, isn't that another one that they could have rigged? Could they have rigged it for the Celtics to get Tim Duncan? And he goes to this team that was down and out for a while, hadn't necessarily been good since the 80s. Larry Bird's gone, and you want to pump some more gas into that, fuel up that organization a little bit more. Or they could have also paired a young Tim Duncan next to a young Allen Iverson in the 97 draft with the Philadelphia 76ers. And they didn't do it. The Spurs won the lottery. And then Tim Duncan goes on, wins 5 titles with the Spurs. I don't know if the Spurs win any titles without Tim Duncan. I don't know if they do. So that's just kind of my thoughts on it. I don't think the lottery's rigged. I think that, because again, too, and here's my last point on this. The lottery isn't rigged because these are all billion-dollar organizations that are combining together. That's the NBA. All these organizations are worth at least like 3 to like 8, 10 billion. If it got out that like the NBA was rigging the lottery, one, don't you think it would have gotten out? I don't think it could be like that sealed lips. And two, if it was kind of like this understanding agreement with all the NBA ownership groups that like, hey, if we're going to rig the lottery sometimes, if we want to get certain players into certain situations, don't you think certain ownership groups would be mad about that and possibly be vocal about that? Don't we think that would happen? Don't we think that would happen? Don't you think maybe the Detroit owner would be mad about that? The Charlotte owner? The Houston owner? There's a lot of vocal NBA owners. And I think they would be pretty mad about that if the lottery wasn't fair and if it was rigged. So there you have it, guys. That's going to do it for this episode here today. Thank you very much for watching. If you like content like this, please hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. And maybe give a comment on maybe something I missed, some interesting lottery rigging facts that you might have. I know people are probably not going to like that I said that the lotteries aren't rigged. So, just tell me what you think in the comments. Really much appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching. Love the support. Hit that like button, subscribe, help us out in the algorithm. I'll talk to you next time.